Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm going to get started in a minute. I just need to let everyone on social media know that the stream is currently on the air. Okay, this is my first show that I've done in about a 2 week absence. Thank you, Introvert Rockstar. I'm really glad to see you here, and I'm really happy that you'll enjoy the channel. And this is my first show in 2 weeks, and I really want to get back on track with the show that I originally planned. And the show that I originally planned was supposed to be talking about this new generation in the single successful sisterhood of failure. Now, this new generation of Black women were supposed to do better than their mothers, their grandmothers, and their aunties, who were a part of the 70% of Black women who wound up single and miserable and wound up becoming the first or second generation of victims who became the part of the paradigm of failure. And we thought that these women, Kiki Palmer, Skai Jackson, and Halle Bailey, would go on to go out here and achieve and actualize their potential. Unfortunately, what happened with these three women is that they basically represent what I call the next generation of the single successful sisterhood of failure by the sad decisions that they made that basically put them on the road to single motherhood. Now, all three of these women are basically representing the whole example of what happens when you have, again, girls who grow up without a father. And when they grow up without fathers, in a lot of cases, or a model for a successful relationship, they go out here, and yes, they can go out here and have great economic success. But what will happen is in their personal lives will fall into complete shambles because the model that they learned for life basically came from that group of women in the Black matriarchy that many, like Obsidian back in the day, used to call the sisterhood of failure. And that's what happened here with all three of these prominent entertainers, Kiki Palmer, Skai Jackson, and Halle Bailey. All three of these young Black ladies basically wound up on the same road of failure that wound up taking out many of the single, successful, educated Black women that came up in the 1980s and the 1990s. Now, the first generation of single, successful, educated Black women basically came up in the late 70s and the late 80s, early 80s, when Black women basically started to embrace the white feminist movement. And as they embraced the white feminist movement, they were told by white feminists that they could go out here and be strong, independent Black women, and that they did not need a man. And as they were told these messages by white feminists and sided with the feminist movement, we had several groups of Black women basically start to go out here and look to go out here and make it on their own as the white feminists told them they could. And as they did this, they wound up kicking the Black father out of the home. And as they kicked the Black father out of the home, a lot of these women became part of the welfare state. and others basically got jobs through affirmative action programs that were supposed to be given to Black men. But the institution of white supremacy gave those jobs to Black women because they wanted to go out here and establish a matriarchy in Black communities. And as they looked to establish a matriarchy in the Black community, they wanted to go out here and make it where the Black woman was the de facto head of household because she would be the one who would control the resources and the purse strings of the Black economy. And as she would go out here and control the purse strings of the Black economy and be established by white supremacy as the head of the household and the steward over the Black community, this is where we started to lay the foundation for the Black matriarchy established by white supremacy. And this matriarchy basically was established so that Black women, again, could be the ones in control. And white supremacy wanted the Black woman in control because, one, Black women were emotional and they could use this to control them because as Black women, again, were very impulsive as related to their decisions. And they would also be impulsive as related to the way that they would spend. And this would prevent the Black economy from building wealth because with women being consumers, they would be mostly focused on trying to build things as related to social currency instead of building tangible wealth. And they would be focused on looking to build things as related to getting social acceptance. So all of this really benefited the whole white and non-Black communities, which basically started investing in the Black community as the Black woman was made to be the breadwinner. And as she was made to be the breadwinner, we started to see Black women again who were in the welfare state start going to school. And as they started going to school, they started getting their degrees. And as they started getting their degrees, they started entering the jobs, joining the women who were already a part of the affirmative action programs. And this created a middle class group of Black women who started to become the group of the first generation of the single, successful, well-educated Black women. This was the baby boomer group of these Black women. And this group of single, successful Black women, yes, they went out here and worked to get a lot of success. And as they were working to get this success, they were basically had their whole viewpoint of the world validated by the mainstream media, with shows like the Oprah Winfrey Show, which went out here demonizing Black men and also talking about all the struggles of Black women as related to no good Black men. And as this generation of baby boomers was out here getting their ideas validated in this mainstream media, the generation I'm a part of, Generation X, we started going out and working in schools and going to school. And as we came out of school in the early 90s, what happened is as we came into college, this is where they were publishing a lot of these books talking about this generation of single, successful, well-educated Black women. And a lot of these Black women, yes, they would brag about their jobs. They would brag about all the money they were making, and they would look like they had success on the outside. However, what happened with a lot of those Black women is that their lives were in complete shambles, and their lives were in complete shambles because in many cases, this first generation of the single successful generation of Black women, basically, yes, they knew how to go out here and be able to work in corporate America, but sadly, they did not know how to make life work because many of these women basically learned how to become feminists and not women. And because they learned to become feminists, what happened to these women is they imbibed and were programmed with a mindset that basically wound up making it where they had a hard time being able to work with a man. And I go in depth on this in my book, The Woman Crisis. In my book, The Woman Crisis, I go in depth on the whole difference between a feminist and a woman. And what happens with many of these single, successful Black women is they sat there and they could make life work in the corporate job. They would submit to the bosses at the corporate job. They would go out here and be very productive at the job as basically the enforcer at the job doing the work of white supremacy. However, when these women wound up in a life as related to their personal lives, nothing really worked for these women. And you would hear the lament of these women, starting with 1992's book from Terry McMillan, Waiting to Exhale, where that first generation of Black women from the baby boomer group started whining about, oh, I can't find a man. I can't get a man. There's no men out there. This was the narrative that they pushed. Oh, there's no men out there, when in actuality, it was their social miseducation that they got as related to being indoctrinated into feminism, that led to these women making it where even though they were making a lot of money, they basically were not having success in their personal lives. And this is what led to these women sitting and having these whole sessions on shows like Oprah Winfrey. And this is where we got the first generation of the Sisterhood of Failure. And as Obsidian used to call them, the Sisterhood of Failure, basically we had this group of single, successful, well-educated Black women. This whole group of single, successful, well-educated Black women would say, oh, I can't find a man. But the whole thing is, the reason why they couldn't find a man, the first foundation of it is that these women basically, again, were raised to be feminist and not women. And because they were raised to be feminist and not women, what they didn't know is that a feminist has a whole different frame of thinking that makes it where she's not really going to be able to have a relationship. Now, the whole problem with many of the feminists is that they go looking for a man and not a husband. And they don't understand that these are two different things, because the sad part about many of the feminists is that they don't know their role as a woman in God's order. They don't know their role as a woman to be a helpmeet to a man and look to help meet the needs of a man. Moreover, many of these women don't know how to follow the lead of a man or see a man as a head, because the way they have been miseducated is to believe that they need to go out here and be the person who's in charge. They need to be the one who wants to be the head of the relationship. This is what they have been taught, that they are the leaders of the relationship. They are the ones who need to be in charge. And this is something that was taught to them by their first teacher, which was their mother, who in many cases still was dealing with a lot of emotional baggage as related to her failed relationship, and taught her daughter not to trust any man or work with any man. But in order to have any sort of successful relationship, a woman has to learn how to submit to a man and follow the leadership of a man. That's what a woman has to do. Unfortunately, feminists don't know how to do this. And when it comes to a lot of the Black women of that first generation, they basically, again, were still dealing with the trauma from their mothers, who were single mothers. And these mothers, again, took out a lot of their anger on their daughters. And as those daughters went out into the corporate world, what happened to them is that they basically went out here and they didn't know how to go out here and have a relationship with a man. And they didn't know how to have a successful relationship with a man, or what a relationship with a man meant for a woman. And that's because many feminists out here basically were raised to believe that they are the same as a man and that men and women are equal. This is a thing that basically messed up a lot of Black women, is that they've bought into feminist ideas about men and women being the same when men and women are completely different. And as they were thinking, oh, a woman and a man are the same, what happened with these women is they went out here thinking that they could take the role of the man, take the role of head as the man, and believe they were entitled to that role as head because, one, they saw the men that their mother talked about being failures and being completely incompetent. Two, they were told by the feminists that they were equal to a man and could do this and be in the same role as a man. Three, they were told that the man could not be trusted to lead. So they wanted to go and be in that leadership role. And as they looked to be in that leadership role, this is what led to these women winding up missing out on what actual success for a woman is, because the standard of success for a woman and a man are completely different. Now, the standard for success for a man is to go out here and build wealth and go out here and build structures for wealth so that the family can be provided for. But the structure for success for a woman is marriage. And for her, being married is considered the standard of success. But when feminism came along, they wanted the woman to have the same standard for success that men had. But that didn't satisfy most women once they got these college degrees, once they got these jobs, once they went out here and were making all this money. What happened was many of these women just weren't satisfied because they didn't meet the standard for success for a woman, which was going out here and having a husband. And since these women basically could not achieve that standard for success, which was getting a husband, what happened with many of these women is that they wound up becoming extremely upset. And this is why we saw so many of these women coming on talk shows with their multiple college degrees, their six-figure jobs, talking about how they can't get a man. But what they didn't understand is that they didn't get taught the life skills that they would need to be able to have a relationship with a man. And this wasn't taught to them because they were indoctrinated into feminism, and they were also raised in these single mother households. And as they were raised in these single mother households, or these divorced households, or these households with other dysfunctional models, what they didn't see was a model of a man and a woman in a marriage. And as they didn't see a man and a woman in a marriage, what happened to most of these Black women who were sitting there watching their mama watching the Oprah Winfrey show, sitting there as their mama was watching the Oprah Winfrey show, they were learning basically that, oh, there was no about how to look, complain about a man, but never saw a model of an example of how to have a healthy relationship with a man. And this is basically what led to many of these women, even though they had success on their jobs, creating a paradigm of failure. And this led to this group of Black women becoming the Sisterhood of failure. And as they became the Sisterhood of failure, basically they were failing, even though they had the six-figure jobs, big houses, luxury cars. They were failing because they could not make a relationship work with a man. And they couldn't make a relationship work with a man because they had gotten a spiritual miseducation. And they got a spiritual miseducation, one, from the Black pastor who refused to teach Black women about their role as women. And two, they got a dysfunctional life relationship at miseducation because their mothers basically just went out here and did several things. One thing is that they modeled dysfunctional relationships in front of them, and by being involved with toxic males. And as these girls grew up seeing this as their model but for relationships, they just saw their moms being involved with these low grade guys like the Pookies and Ray Rays of the baby boomer generation. As they saw them out here with the Pookies and the Ray Rays, who were basically, again, they were not fathers. In many cases, a lot of these guys, they basically abandoned in some cases, abandoned their families. Other ones basically were involved with these women as a so-called man. But in many cases, we never saw many of these guys be husbands. And in a lot of cases, we didn't see a lot of these guys become husbands because a lot of women basically wanted to finesse the U.S. government as related to the welfare state and continue to receive the benefits from the welfare state because it said that you could not have a father in the home when it came down to things. And this was enforced in Black households more than it was in white or Hispanic households because there were Puerto Ricans and Mexicans on welfare and their dads were in their lives. But when it came to the Black household, those women were told and had these overseer caseworkers coming in and looking to go out here and enforce policies on them. And this basically created a model that many of these little kids grew up seeing. And as they grew up seeing their mothers not being married to a man or marriage being the standard for success for a woman, what they saw was their mothers basically going out here having children out of wedlock and going out here and having relationships with men. And this is how we got the whole idea and the concept of women wanting to go look for a man instead of looking to go out here and have a husband and marriage, because what they wanted to do was, again, program the idea in Black women's minds. Oh, you can go out here and have a man, and this would be a substitute for a husband. But in actuality, there is no substitute for a husband, because God made the standard of husband, because a husband is a title created by God, and God's title of husband is one that he made for a man to be a part of his order. And when a man is a part of his order as his head and his steward, he is accountable directly to God, and he has a direct connection to God. And that husband goes out here and looks to serve God by establishing his family and looking to respect a Black woman by giving her the esteemed title of a wife. And as he gives her the esteemed title of wife, what he's doing is going out here and making a commitment to that woman, making a commitment to build a home with that woman, making a commitment to build a home with that woman. And that is her success, because one, she is being chosen by this man as related to her having somebody who will be a leader over her. She is being protected and covered by that man, and protected and covered by God. And she is given benefits in that relationship, in that she is, again, under the protection of that man. And again, this is her success, because having a husband for a woman is the ultimate form of success. But sadly, the first generation of Black women didn't understand what success was, because they were bamboozled by feminists who told Black women that you could have success by having one of these jobs, or basically getting on welfare and then working your way up out of welfare into one of these jobs. And we're told that they could have success on the level of a man without a man. Unfortunately, what happens is these women never got any sort of spiritual satisfaction. No, they didn't get any of the spiritual satisfaction that God wants women to have as related to relationships in his order. And this is where the generation of single, successful, well-educated Black women wind up not having any success in life, because the guys that they can get involved with as related to maintaining their power in the system of white supremacy, the power that they get as related to being the de facto head of household established by white supremacy, in order to maintain that power, what these single, successful, well-educated Black women have to deal with is they can't wind up having a relationship with a man that eventually turns into marriage, because having that relationship with that man means that they have to go out here and submit to that man. And these women don't want to submit to that man. And again, these feminists, what happens to them is that they get caught up in a power struggle. And as they get caught up in this power struggle, what happens to those Black women is they're not capable of working with a man. And the only guys who will work with these Black women in most cases are usually beta males who usually come from the same type of single mother households that they come from. And usually these men have been taught to submit to women. But sadly, what happens in these whole relationships is that these relationships wind up having friction, because the natural man that they get involved with has a problem with the whole power structure, because naturally a man is wired to want to lead. A man is naturally wired to want to be the head. And this man basically starts to feel powerless in this relationship. I go in depth on this in my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. Many of these guys that they get involved with really start to feel powerless, because they see this woman having all of these education, all of this success. And many of these men, because again, a man's whole thing naturally is he wants to lead. And not only does he want to lead, a man naturally wants to build. And since a man naturally wants to build, he wants to be the one who's an architect as related to that relationship. And it's hard to do that when you're in a place where you're under the authority of a woman. And that's where these women who were single, successful, and well educated start to have problems, because this man wants to be able to actualize his potential as a man. And he starts getting frustrated because this woman wants to be the one in charge, and she feels entitled to be the one in charge because this is what the feminist told her. Moreover, whenever it comes to power, she doesn't trust that man to go out here and have power, because she's heard the horror stories from Big Mama about how her daddy was trifling, how her daddy was no good, how her daddy wasn't responsible. And this guy, basically, he doesn't know how to be responsible, just like the father that basically walked out on the family, because he's a beta male and he's basically a weak man who doesn't know how to go about things as related to process, doesn't know how to go out here and have the male life skills or male survival skills to be able to function in the world. And this guy basically, again, as he's feeling powerless, he starts to become frustrated and starts to do things to this relationship where he will look to try to find ways to get dominance, because he's feeling emasculated. He feels like he's in a role lower than a child or a pet dog, because when it comes to these single, successful, well-educated women, what happens is they go get with this Pookie type guy, but this Pookie type guy basically feels completely emasculated. And as he feels completely emasculated, this is where these women wind up in several really bad situations, like I talk about in my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. I talk all in depth about how these men, basically, they start to feel powerless. They start to feel frustrated because they're basically sitting in this house like in letting a role lower than the pet dog, because at least the pet dog has a purpose. I mean, he has no purpose at all. I mean, he's been stripped of his manhood and his masculinity. He's lower than a child, because at least a child can go to school and learn something. A child can go to school and basically be a child. But this grown man, he's sitting up here, he's playing PlayStation, he's playing Xbox, he's sitting there watching talk shows all day long. And he's basically sitting there. He wants to go out here and be a man, but he's being taken care of by this woman in a codependent relationship. And as he's taken care of in this codependent relationship, he's feeling frustrated. And this is where many of these Black women start to have problems with the Black men that they choose, the rude poo dudes that they get involved with, because again, no actual man is going to get involved with a woman like these feminist indoctrinated women, because it's a power struggle. And again, this woman is incompatible with him. She's completely incompatible with him, because it's going to turn into a power struggle. I go in depth on this in my other book, The Woman Crisis. It becomes a power struggle with that man. And that's why many of these single, successful, well-educated women can't find that successful relationship with a man that eventually leads to marriage, because these women have this power struggle. And this power struggle is the thing that eventually leads to these relationships breaking up. It leads to these relationships breaking up because this woman does not want to submit to this man, doesn't want to submit to God's order. No, she would rather stay in the system of white supremacy, because the system of white supremacy gives her job security, gives her security as related to being able to continue making money. And as she's got her college degrees and her 6 figures, this is where the sister from the sisterhood of failure starts to feel miserable, because the one thing she wants to do is make a relationship work, but she can't make a relationship work because she wants that security from white supremacy. And as she wants that economic security, what that does is make it where that woman basically cannot work with a man as related to a marriage as God has established. And that started with, again, that first generation of Black women who were a part of the baby boomer generation, and further went on with my generation, Generation X, where we started to see the next generation of this dysfunction, with shows like Girlfriends, which showed us characters like Joan Clayton and many others like Maya and Lynn, who basically couldn't really make a relationship work because, again, strong, independent Black woman learned from her mother. And as she learned from her mother, we started to see, again, this group of Black women passing down a culture of dysfunction, passing down a culture of dysfunction where they taught their daughters about no good Black men. And as they taught their daughters about no good Black men, and were still out here thinking that they had to do it all on their own and that the sisters needed to do it all by themselves, they basically did themselves in and did themselves in as we started to see many of Gen X turn into their 30s and the gender war started to go on. And as the gender war went on, at least on the Black male and even some of the Black female side, we started to see people trying to teach the young sisters against the ideals of feminism because they saw the paradigm of failure. And as these brothers and sisters came on social media, they started to try to teach the new generation about this whole sisterhood of failure, tried to teach about this sisterhood of failure and this model and this paradigm of failure that these women were participating in and trying to prevent another generation from winding up getting caught up into this trap, where basically what would happen is these women would wind up missing out on the best years of their lives because they went out here following this whole paradigm of failure, following this entire paradigm of failure that has already been proven to be a failure from grandma's generation to Big Mama's generation, and now is another generation. And again, it's like we're getting one generation after the other. It's sort of like what Real Man Allen 73 talked about as related to grandma's lies and a generational curse, and one generation after the other following in the footsteps of another generation. That's what I'm seeing right now. I mean, I remember seeing the Oprah Winfrey generation, basically the baby boomer generation, follow Oprah Winfrey down this road. Then I saw the women of Generation X, like Halle Bailey, following down this whole road as related to this paradigm of failure. And now I'm watching a third generation of Black women, or even a fourth generation like Gabriel is talking about. I mean, this third or fourth generation, I mean, we've got Kiki Palmer, Skai Jackson, and Halle Bailey. Again, three single, successful, young Black actresses heading down this road of failure, just like the previous generation. And basically, many Black women not picking up on the pattern of this entire paradigm of failure. And that's the whole scary part about this whole situation is we've got this third or fourth generation making the same bad decision as their grandma, as their auntie, as many of their previous family members, and many of these Black women not really taking a look at their mama, their grandmama, or their great-grandmama and seeing a pattern of failure, a complete pattern of failure that even though these women had promising, successful careers, promising lives as related to their economic success, their whole personal lives were in complete shambles. I mean, that's the sad thing about this situation. I mean, I've seen this situation go on when, as part of my generation, I've seen so many young sisters I went to with in high school. They basically wound up messing up their lives. They were doing straight A's in school, had after school jobs, some of them even going to college. And when it came to picking a man to be happy in a relationship, these women could not go out here and achieve that success. And the reason why basically many of these women could not achieve that success is due to the fact that in many cases, they didn't have a father in their lives. And since they didn't have that father in their life to go out here and model manhood for them and show them an example of manhood by showing love to their mother, what happened to those girls is those girls didn't know how to see an example of a man in front of them to know what to choose when they got involved with a man. Moreover, these girls did not have that father there to nurture them and give them emotional security. And as these girls went out here, and again, they got academic and economic success. Yes, they could have that academic and economic success as related to degrees and jobs, but they could not go out here and find that personal, emotional, or spiritual success by being able to find that husband to cleave to and have that security of looking for that man that they could be able to forsake mother and father for. That's the problem that many young Black women have had from generation to generation, because many Black women bought into feminism. And as they bought into feminism, they were told, oh, you don't need a man. You don't need to have that man in your life. You can do it all by yourself. And told these Black women that they didn't need a father in the home. And the great irony is that these women went to a church and went to a church every day. And the Black pastor, even though they had a Bible in front of them, these same Black women would basically not look at the chapters of Genesis, which told them it is not good for a man to be alone. And I actually believe it's not good for a woman to be alone either. And God made men and women to be together. But sadly, many of them would rather be working for a man and have made the government a substitute husband. Unfortunately, that substitute husband of the government and corporate America cannot meet their emotional needs and their spiritual needs. And this is what leads to these women, again, not having that foundation. Again, a father in the home, a foundation in God, a foundation to understand their role as a woman. And as these girls grow up into adolescence, they don't know what to look for as related to love from a man. And this is where they wind up getting involved with guys for the wrong reasons. Like, for example, when I think about Kiki Palmer, I mean, Kiki Palmer was a young Black sister who had lots of promise, had lots of, and looked like the world was going to be for her. And again, looked to have great success. I mean, from Aquila and the Bee to True Jackson VP. And then all of a sudden, she gets involved with this guy, basically for the reason of him being cute and light-skinned, and decides to go out here and have a baby with this dude for two reasons. One reason is that she wanted to have a covert contract where she thought she could go out here and have this baby, hoping this man would commit. The other reason was she wanted to have a baby who was light-skinned. She wanted to have a light-skinned baby. And again, not looking for any values and character, just getting with the guy because he was light-skinned. That was what I saw many years ago in the 1980s when I was growing up. So many Black girls out here choosing guys because they were cute, choosing guys because they had curly hair, and again, choosing guys for these emotional vanity reasons because there was no father there to show them a model of manhood, show them an example of manhood, and a man there to vet these kind of guys, because usually a girl chooses a guy based on emotions, but doesn't have, because there's no father there to vet this dude, she gets involved with this guy for all the wrong reasons. And as she gets involved with this guy for the wrong reasons, she has a relationship that doesn't set up for marriage. And what happens is this girl winds up on the road to becoming a baby mama. And that's sadly what happened to Kiki Palmer, who was set up to become, again, a single, successful, well-educated Black woman who basically wound up on the road to becoming a baby mama, like many other so-called professional Black women wind up. They wind up on the road to single motherhood because they don't get a social education. They don't get a spiritual education that's related to life. And they just get involved with the wrong men. And as they get involved with the absolute wrong men, like Kiki Palmer did, they wind up, again, not going out here and getting married, but wind up becoming these baby mamas. And as they become a baby mama, this is where their lives go from the road to success with a career to these women winding up on the road to becoming women in crisis. And they wind up becoming women in crisis because they choose to have relationships on just their terms. which are the term of a feminist. And the term of a feminist is one where they don't understand how to have a relationship with a man. They don't know how to work with a man. No, they think that the man is supposed to follow them and submit to them. They think that the man is supposed to be this weak dude. And usually what happens is, as they have this, get involved with this weak dude, they'd have no respect for that dude. And that was shown in the case of Kiki Palmer, who got with this guy who she had no respect for. She had absolutely no respect for. All she wanted to do was use him for his seed, and got involved with this guy, not thinking about, can this guy build anything? Can this guy be a leader as related to a relationship? And this was what leads to these women becoming frustrated and angry because they wind up becoming dissatisfied by these men. But what's even sadder about Kiki Palmer is that as she had one child in this whole paradigm of failure, she wound up getting pregnant once more by the same dude, got involved with the same dude, and had a second child, basically participating in the same behavior I've seen many Black girls participate in when they get involved with Pookie. They'll go out here and have one baby with Pookie, thinking this will make the guy commit. And when that doesn't work, they'll go out here and do it again, not understanding doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And it's the definition of insanity. And sadly, Kiki Palmer, for being single, successful, and well-educated, doesn't see that this is Arkham-certified behavior, but she participates in this Arkham-certified behavior, thinking that she can get to success when the only way to get to success is to vet this person to see if they are serious about marriage. And if they are not serious about marriage, a woman's job is to charge that man to the game, because that man is not looking to be a help me. He's just looking to help himself to getting her to drop the skid mark jockey draws and put this carbon rod on the atomic waste reactor for a little bit of nuclear fusion. And after participating in that nuclear fusion, where he's basically bending her over and riding her like a cowboy, he basically goes out here and leaves her right where he found her. And that's what happens to those women. And I look at, again, Kiki Palmer, and it's really sad because, again, this is the newest generation of Black women. And then we have Skai Jackson. Again, Skai Jackson was basically, people thought that she was going to be another promising sister. They thought she was going to be another promising sister. I mean, she was, again, set up by Disney to be put on a road to stardom. But sadly, Skai Jackson, as she's 22 years old, went off the road to success to the road to failure because, like Kiki Palmer, she wound up getting spellbound by this dude who basically was biracial, for his crystal hazel eyes and his creamy white skin. And as she saw that light skin, she basically looked to go out here and get rid of everything. And what's even sadder about Skai Jackson is she wound up coming from a household of divorce. So she thought, okay, my mom's a single mom. She's out here with a lot of success. My mom's a single mom. She's making lots of money. My mom's a single mom who's doing very well. So I don't really need to be involved with a man. I don't even need to be having a husband because marriage didn't work for mama. And since marriage didn't work for mama, I don't need to have marriage work for me. And what's sad about Skai Jackson is she stepped into this paradigm of failure because there was no father there to tell her, no, don't get involved with no man who you're not married to, and to have some criteria and some standards. That's the same thing that messed up Kiki Palmer. Neither one of these women had any standards because mama, grandmama, and great-grandmama didn't have any standards outside of, hey, he's cute. Hey, he got light skin. Hey, he got a big butt. Hey, he's got some muscles. That's what these women basically were caught up in, and they got involved with this kind of guy. And the sad part of Skai Jackson is she's gotten involved with a guy who basically looks like he's possibly a beater. I say possibly a beater, or possibly because they've had some domestic disputes. And she's gotten involved with this guy who a lot of people are concerned about. And again, gotten involved with this guy because the Sisterhood of Failure basically co-signed on this, and basically said, oh, this guy's okay, because this is what mama, grandmama, and great grandmama saw as their model. This is who mama, great grandmama, and all of them saw as their model. And since they saw this as their model for manhood, they thought that this was a perfect man to be involved with. But this is not the kind of guy that any smart woman wants to get involved with. No, any smart woman would look at this dude that Skai Jackson is with, a guy who's starting to build an arrest record. This man is not going out here building a life. And he's basically put Skai Jackson, who was on a road to success, to a road of social failure, a road to failure, because now at 22 years old, she's now a single mom. And that really destroys her brand the same way it destroyed Kiki Palmer's brand, because the Disney Corporation and many of these movie studios can't sell them because of optics, because it's not optically looking good when you're trying to sell a family brand and trying to sell a family brand with a woman who's having children out of wedlock to a man who basically has no job or no real ability to do for self. I mean, that optically looks bad for your brand. And these women basically torpedoed their chances to be able to continue making a living in Hollywood, similar to what happens to many single successful Black women from previous generations who got involved with Pookie. Pookie basically wound up started messing up their lives, because as they got involved with this Pookie, and this Pookie was feeling emasculated, this Pookie was feeling powerless, this Pookie was feeling frustrated, he would go out here and not really be a good person to work with them as related to building anything. And he would feel resentful if she took him to places like the office Christmas party. This is the guy who comes to your office party with sagging pants and a Pele leather jacket and Timberland spice stands, talking street slang, and going into the office bathroom or the venue's bathroom to smoke up, and basically embarrasses that Black woman because she reflects poorly on that man. And as she reflects poorly, it basically stalls her career, because people look at that man who's a reflection of that Black woman, and they don't see the picture of success. No, they see the picture of failure, because if this woman couldn't go out here and choose a spouse who was a husband and could be a husband, then they start questioning her ability to be a leader at that company. And that's what happens to a lot of the single, successful, educated Black women, that basically throws their careers off track, and throws their careers off track because many of these companies, again, they look at the partners that they're choosing and wonder if this person can be trusted to be responsible at their business. That's what happens to many of the single, successful Black women who can't connect the dots as related to why their success in life is preventing them from being able to have success as related to their personal life. I mean, they're wondering, oh, I've got this college degree, I've got this job. Why aren't things working for me as related to my personal life? And again, I'll repeat it once more. The reason why it's not working is because you don't have that relationship with the Most High God. You don't know your role as a woman. And because you don't know your role as a woman, what happens is, because mama never taught you your role, you're following her paradigm, which is the paradigm of failure set up from white supremacy, the paradigm of failure that basically leads to you failing because you learned a failed model from grandma, from mama, from auntie. All the women in your life have taught you this paradigm and model for failure about looking to be in the role of the man, looking to compete with the man, looking to be in the leadership role of the man, and seeing that, oh, yes, you can get this academic success. You can even get success in the college. You can get success at the job. But the whole thing is, you don't know how to make a relationship work with a man. You don't know how to do that because you never saw this modeled for you. You don't have the interpersonal skills to make a relationship work with a man. You don't know how to give a man basic respect because you've seen your mother openly disrespecting men. And in some cases, see your grandma and seeing other women in your community openly disrespecting most of the men in the community, openly disrespecting the men in the community, going out here talking greasy to men, talking to those men badly. Mm. Talking bad to those men, talking greasy to those men. I mean, this is the type of stuff that makes it where these young girls again don't know how to work in a relationship with a guy, don't know how to again respect a man. This is one of the big things that leads to a lot of women being single is they don't understand the basic concept of respect in that you don't sit there and do things like mock a man, make fun of a man, just be laughing at a man in front of people. No, you don't be talking over a man. I mean, these are things that a lot of black girls are not taught. They're not taught, when you're in a relationship with a man, you need to show him respect. You need to go out here and present yourself in a respectable fashion that does not embarrass or emasculate that man in the presence of other people because that makes you look bad. No, they're not taught these essential life skills as related to relationships. And this is why their relationships wind up not really working out. And as they see things not working out, what's sad is they don't have a support system of healthy women. No, they go to the sisterhood, and the sisterhood of failure basically wants to see these women miserable in their company. They want to see those women miserable in their company because many of these women are stuck in a state of arrested development. And since they're stuck in a state of arrested development, what happens with many of these women is they're still at a mental age of 14 to 18 years old, even though they're 50 and 60 years old, or even 80 years old, and they still are looking to compete with their daughters, their granddaughters, their nieces, and their great granddaughters. And since they're looking to compete, what they look to do is sabotage those nieces, granddaughters, daughters, and great granddaughters. They basically look to sabotage those women. So there's no support system for those women to learn what to do that actually works. And that basically derails those women like it basically derailed Halle Bailey. Now, Halle Bailey was another sad case of this whole next generation of the single successful sisterhood of failure. Halle Bailey basically was another black woman who had a lot of promise, because she had a successful singing career with her sister, Chloe, and was on her way rising as an actress when she wound up making a business decision I thought she should have passed on. I mean, when Disney told her that they wanted her to be the next Little Mermaid, I would have told her, if I was her father, don't take that project because the Little Mermaid is a red-haired white woman and was played by Joni Benson. And you don't want to play this role because it basically is going to torpedo your career because you're going to alienate most of the people in the world who know who the Little Mermaid is. But Halle Bailey took this role, and after she wound up taking this role, her career basically wound up falling completely apart because once this film failed at the box office, the studios no longer saw her as somebody who was a property that had value anymore because this movie basically bombed at the box office and did very poorly. And since then, Halle Bailey basically has been desperate. And as she's been desperate, she got involved with this YouTube musician, DDG, who really isn't a pookie, but is a guy who really doesn't know his role as a man or his value as a man. And this guy basically got involved with Halle Bailey, who thought, oh, I'll go out here and become a single mother, and sadly put herself on the road to being on the road to the sisterhood of failure because she was on her way to being a rising star. But sadly, after the failure of The Little Mermaid, she wound up taking a road to the sisterhood of failure, went out here and became a single mother, basically out here as a single mom, thinking that this was perfectly okay. But the whole sad part is that while she was told this by the mainstream media, okay, it's okay to be a single mom, she basically wound up on a road to the sisterhood of failure and sadly becomes another third or fourth generation of women on the road to being in this road of failure. And the sad part is that many of these women from generation to generation don't take that moment to reflect on where they are and how they wound up there, seeing a clear pattern like Real Man Allen 73 saw about 10, 15 years ago when he talked about grandma's lies and a generational curse. And as we've gone from generation to generation, we've seen, again, all of these single successful sisters wind up on this road to failure, a road to failure, which sadly is one that they are encouraged to go on by institutions like BET. Now, I want you to take a look at this tweet that I talk about in an upcoming video. There's a tweet that I talk about in an upcoming tweet, a video regarding this tweet. And I'm going to show you this tweet right now from BET that basically says, Kiki Palmer, Halle Bailey, and Skai Jackson don't need approval to be mothers, but deserve empathy and respect. And that whole statement in and of itself basically is looking to validate this whole sisterhood of failure and this pattern of failure that took these three beautiful young Black women on a road to failure. That's what they did here as related to things. You have this white-owned Black channel going out here and looking to say, oh, these women are mothers. No, they are baby mamas. They are baby mamas. And what's sad is we've been conditioned to believe that a baby mama is a mother because, again, feminists don't like mothers and they want to demonize the mother by making it where, oh, the single mom is perfectly fine for Black women. Again, showing the racism of feminism, basically wanting to go out here and say, oh, it's okay for a Black woman to be a single mom, have children out of wedlock, say it's okay for these women to, again, present them as the image of success, say that this is the image of success. When I remember back growing up in the late 1980s, a young woman having a child out of wedlock, this was frowned on. And I remember going to high school and seeing many of the girls that I went to school with who had all that promise. Once they went out here starting to have babies for these dudes, we knew it was basically over for those women. We knew it was over for them. And again, what the BET, this white-owned Black network, wants to do is want to go out here and try to, again, use their station to validate this whole idea and say, oh, they don't need approval to become these single mothers and don't need approval. But that's the big problem. Again, you did not go out here and look to seek approval from God. You didn't go out here looking to go out here and establish a relationship with God first. And he would have told you to, again, go be married and have a husband and look to be a helpmeet to him. And what's further goes on as related to this tweet is that it states, oh, a mental health expert explains how parasocial relationships fuel harsh judgment. And what we have here with the mental health expert part of the statement is white supremacy looking to use the institution of psychology to go out here and validate what I would call an antisocial relationship, because it's an antisocial relationship when you have these young Black women going out here having relationships with these Pookie type guys. And it's an antisocial relationship because what's happening in this situation is that you have these women having these antisocial relationships, these very antisocial relationships with these guys who have no real way of being a man, have no understanding of their role as a man, have no purpose as a man, and these guys don't know how to be a man. So you're telling these young women, and again, looking to indoctrinate them into a set of ideals that will not have them having success as a relationship, because again, I'll repeat it once more, success for a woman is marriage. Success for a woman is achieving the goal of getting a marriage from a man. That is success for a woman. No matter what the feminist or anybody tells you, women, in many cases, don't feel emotional or spiritual satisfaction unless they wind up married. And a lot of women can't get married because you have institutions of white supremacy like BET looking to go out here and look to get Black women not on the road to God's order, but put them on the road to the sisterhood of failure and the paradigm of failure, because they don't want these women to grow up to become successful women, because having marriages like we had from the 1920s to up to the 1960s before the feminist movement, where Black women were the most married women in the world. This is, again, something that white women don't want to see, because that means that Black women are more successful than white women. Moreover, Black women are basically not out here competing again against their men, so they're working with their men. And if your women are working with the men, that means they're not going out here again being an enemy. And that's what they wanted to do, was break up the black woman and the black man. This is what the feminists were used for by the corporate types and the business types. They wanted to break up the black family and break up the black family and create this whole model for failure, a model for failure that started with the baby boomers, continued on with Generation X, continued on with millennials, and continued on to Generation Z. And what's sad is that when I look at Kiki Palmer, when I look at Skai Jackson and Halle Bailey, again, it's the third or fourth generation following in the footsteps of Grandma, who was the first to embrace the feminist movement, the Gen X black woman who got caught up in super hypergamy during the crack epidemic and got involved with these drug dealer type guys, or got involved with these guys, again, looking to gain power and control. Then we had the millennial woman who got involved with the guy like the Jody from the Baby Boy movie, and the base that he could have been a Gen Xer, but the whole thing is the whole model and example of that was shown not only in Baby Boy, but was also shown in many shows like Judge Judy and Judge Joe Brown, where we saw these black males living with women and the women taking care of that man, and that man not able to take care of his own business, and those women choosing those men because they didn't want to submit to a man. They'd rather submit to a boss. They'd rather follow the lead of a boss. And as they looked to follow the lead of that boss, which they learned how to do from their mothers who followed the lead of a boss because they had no husband and no man in their life, because they had no father to teach them or show them a model of manhood. What happened is we got generation after generation of women who, yeah, they got lots of money. Yeah, they got big degrees. Yeah, they got high-powered jobs. But many of these women, even though they've gotten that success as related to the business world, didn't get much success as related to their personal life or their spiritual world. And it's that world that's in complete shambles, because if you look at many of these women who say that they're high-powered executives or making big money, many of these women, again, are not satisfied with their lives. They're not at peace with themselves, because many of these women covet what the white feminists told them that they had with these jobs, when they didn't even have that at all. No, many of these women were miserable on these jobs. They're not really happy at these jobs, because women don't get satisfaction from getting their emotional needs met at a job. No, a lot of women get their satisfaction from serving a husband and having a relationship with a man. They get their satisfaction from helping that man build a home by nesting in that home and helping him build a structure in that home to make it comfortable for both of them. I mean, these are the things that satisfy women, but the sad part is many of these black women, they don't understand this, because they've bought into the model from the Sisterhood, which is generations of women who are basically teaching dysfunction to each other. And basically, it's the blind leading the blind, and the blind leading one generation of black women into a ditch, and basically going from taking one generation into a ditch to another ditch, and all of them not even knowing how to dig themselves out of the hole that they've fallen in, not understanding how to get themselves out of the hole that they've fallen in, and each generation falling deeper and deeper in this hole, deeper and deeper in this hole that basically is filled with a lot of credit card debt, filled with a lot of student loan debt as they get more and more degrees, but never finding that peace and satisfaction from a relationship with the Most High God, who wants to give them a more abundant life than the college degrees that they've got, more abundant life than the job that they currently have, wants to give them a more abundant life than what they have, that they were told by white supremacy that they should have. I mean, God wants to give people a more abundant life overall. And sadly, what's ironic is that these black women, they went to church all the time, but the black pastor won't really teach them the gospel. won't teach them about their role, and won't teach them what they need to be blessed with a more abundant life. That's what they're not getting, and that's why they're just completely dissatisfied with the state of their lives. And what's sad with Kiki Palmer, Skai Jackson, and Halle Bailey is that we've got a third or fourth generation following on the footsteps of each other into this sisterhood of failure. And as they're in this sisterhood of failure, they don't see how they're basically making the same mistakes over and over again, and having children and teaching their children how to make the exact same mistake over and over again. And that's the most insane thing about this whole pattern. Here you have these women, again, they have not really, they had strong careers, they make lots of money, but they can't make life work as related to a relationship. That's the whole sad part about this whole thing, about watching these three young Black actresses make the same mistake an older Black actress like Halle Berry winds up making, and making the exact same mistake that their grandmothers wound up making. I mean, it truly is like, it's like Real Man Allen 73 talked about many years ago, grandma's lies and a generational curse that keeps these women miserable from generation to generation, and keeps them miserable because they're in the company of each other and cannot find the support and guidance of the man God made to lead them, because God made a man to lead them, but because these women don't trust that man, they can't find that guidance or that help or support or that leadership to get them out of that hole they've dug themselves in, and a hole that gets dug deeper and deeper as they make this compromise with corporate America and white supremacy. And as they make that compromise with corporate America and white supremacy, what happens is you see generation of women, Black women, becoming more and more lost. And that's the whole sad thing that I wanted to talk about 2 weeks ago. And I'm finally getting a chance to talk about it right now, because I was talking to this with a family member, and she was telling me it's just really sad about how, one generation just follows each other, and they're continuing to make these same mistakes. And we see them again, these Black women, again, generation after generation. Just again, I know I'm repeating, but the whole thing is you just see it and it just makes you sad, because you would think that somebody would be able to break this cycle as related to things, and walk away from this whole culture of the sisterhood of failure, a sisterhood of failure that has not led to any sort of success of Black women finding love and finding peace in their lives. Yeah, you got these jobs and you're making a lot of money. Yeah, you got the big house. Yeah, you got the nice cars, but you don't have anybody to share it with. I mean, that's the sad part about most of the modern Black women. They have the whole world, but they lost their souls to get it. They lost their souls, and they are in a place where they're just sadly miserable. And that's the whole sad part, again, about Kiki Palmer and Skai Jackson. Again, their lives are a complete mess in their 20s. And I saw this happen when I was in high school with girls who were in their teens. And sadly, what's happening is I'm seeing generation after generation of Black women learn in this paradigm of failure without ever a way to find a way out of that whole paradigm. And the way you find your way out of that paradigm is to really study the Word of God on your own and learn about your role as a woman in Genesis. Learn what the Apostle Paul talked about as related to submission. Learn about those sermons that the pastor will not preach. And maybe you can find some peace as you surrender your life to Christ, because living in this world all by yourself and trying to do things as related to being independent and not needing a man, that's not how God wanted you to live. Again, if it's not good for the man to be alone, and he made the woman to be a helpmeet to a man, then it's not good for the woman to be alone, because she can be beguiled like Eve, because Eve was beguiled when she was alone. And when she was beguiled, it basically plunged the world into sin and led to a fall. And sadly, that's what happened here with Kiki Palmer, Skai Jackson, and Halle Bailey. They had a big fall, a fall as related to their career, and basically a fall that's basically led to their lives falling completely apart, similar to what I talk about in my screenplay book, All About Marilyn, where they went from rising stars to becoming on the road to becoming faded sitcom stars. And that's the sad tragedy of this whole story of these three women who are the latest in the new generation for the single successful sisterhood of failure. Thank you for the super chat, Internet Rockstar. I really appreciate it with what's going on. J May, yeah, money doesn't buy class. Tavanya Joseph, glad to see you here. Z Ken, glad to see you here. And David, I got what you sent me. And yeah, that's right. Glad to see you here, Gabriel. Yeah, baby boomers really messed up a lot of stuff. And thank you, Wall Street Tech, for the super chat. Yeah, a lot of them were raised by side chicks. A lot of these chicks were basically lost. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff. What's going on, Entrepreneur King 816? Glad to see you here. Yeah, Mr. Thomas is a classic gag. Yeah, it's a cream soda Pookie. That's who these guys choose on El Rey. They choose the Pookies out here because they want to have power over these guys, control over these guys. Yeah. Yeah, it did play a role, computer robots on television and films, because that's what a lot of our kids, especially Gen X, that's all we watched. And that was our model for relationships. And it was a model for relationships for a lot of people. Yeah. Now that I'm going to get ready to wrap up tonight's stream, I mean, I'm glad that I was here with everyone for the first time in 2 weeks. I mean, Christmas season is coming up. So what I'm asking everybody to do is to pick up many of the books on the SJS Direct imprint as a gift for a member of your family. You know, I write positive Black fiction for readers of all ages all over the world. So I'm asking everybody to pick up some of the books on the SJS Direct imprint, like the 2024 books like ISIS, Dark Incubus, the refreshed ISIS, Amari's Revenge, John Haynes' Illuminati, and Scheme Horror in the Hamptons. I mean, if you guys could pick up some of these books, it really helped me out. I mean, last month I only had $10 in book sales, and I used to make $100 in book sales. So if you guys could go out here and pick up some of the books, it would be greatly appreciated. And if you could pick them up as gifts for your family, it could really help your kids out. I mean, I've had people give these books to their kids, and it basically changes their whole perception of Black people and their whole perception of self if they're Black. So I'm asking everybody to pick up some of the books on the SJS Direct imprint. I mean, I really would appreciate your support. I mean, thank you very much for coming out tonight again. And I'd also appreciate if you guys would pick up my comic, John Haynes at Death Store on Lulu.com. I really would appreciate that as well. I mean, the holiday season is coming up. I really want to get more readers picking up the books, and I want to continue making great content. And when you buy the books, it helps me to make more great content. And if you guys want to go out here and continue to support the channel, or just want to just drop a tip or a gift to me, that would be greatly appreciated. You could do that on the Cash App or the PayPal, and that would be greatly appreciated. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Really appreciate you all coming out tonight, and I hope you'll be there for next week's show. Everybody have a good evening, and everybody have a good night.